Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another live stream for China admissions. We are live on Instagram and on YouTube. And don't worry, because both of these videos will be saved onto our Instagram and onto YouTube. So just go follow us there. And if you need to rewatch this later or you want to reference this, just make sure to follow along and you'll be able to watch it again. So today's topic is actually a really important topic. We are going to be going over the universities that are still accepting applications for MBBS applications and for Chinese language program applications. Now, we know that a lot of you are interested in an MBBS program or Chinese language programs. And a lot of you might know that many of the deadlines have already passed. Our main deadline, June 30th, is almost here, and we're currently not accepting applications for that deadline anymore as it is so close to the deadline already. So we're going to be going over the universities that you can still apply to if you want to study a bachelor in medicine or if you want to do a Chinese language program in China. So let's get into it. I'm going to first start with the list of MBBS programs, which is a Bachelor of Medicine, those programs that are still available and have a much later deadline. So the first one, and these are also universities that I just in general recommend. You might find that there are some extra universities that do have deadlines later on that you want to apply to or you're thinking of applying to. But these are the universities that I recommend that you apply to, as these are universities that we in general work quite closely with. And also, if you're applying to a university that there's not a lot of information on their personal website, like their own university website, where it's very outdated, or the university website doesn't work, just be careful. It might be quite difficult to actually get your application across in time. So that's why we recommend to apply to some of these programs instead. So if you have an issue, it's very easy to solve that issue and get in contact with the teachers. Okay, so number one, we have Hebei Medical University, or HBMU. So Hebei Medical University is a wonderful university. It's one of the best medical universities that you can apply to in China. And their teachers are incredibly responsive as well. So if you have any issues, you won't have a problem contacting the teachers. And the application process is very simple. The deadline is actually much later. It is the 1st of October. So by the end of September, you can have your documents in and apply. And the reason why their deadline is the 1st of October is because they start a little bit later than usual. A lot of the universities start around the beginning of September or the middle of September. They start around the end of October, beginning of November. So because of that flexibility, that means that that university is going to be open for applications for quite a while. So I do recommend you check them out. The next one is Jiangsu University, which is also known as JSU. Their deadline is July 15th. So that isn't actually very far away. That's our next big deadline. So that is about 20 days away. So you do need to make sure that you have all your documents ready, and that if you still have some outstanding documents you need to collect, that it's not going to take you very long, because we do understand that for some people, depending on the country that you're in, your medical examination might take a while to actually for you to receive or to get an appointment, and the same for any other documents like a police statement or something like that. So that might take a while. So if you can't get it within those 20 days, we don't recommend you apply to this program. We recommend you apply to a later program like Hebei Medical University. Okay, the next one is Southern Medical University, also known as SMU. Their deadline is also July 15th. It's also very easy for us to get in contact with these teachers, and they're very responsive. So if you need to contact them for any issues, don't worry about that. The next one we have is also one with a slightly later deadline. That is Jinzhou Medical University, also known as JZMU. Their deadline is September 30th. And again, that's because they have a slightly later opening or start date. So their start date is in October, towards the end of October. So that's when you'll be starting. But I do recommend, even though the deadline is quite late or later on, to get your application in as soon as possible, just in case the seats fill up and there's no more openings available, and they close the deadline earlier on. So if you do have all your documents ready, don't hesitate to apply apply, just get your application done and sorted and start your application as soon as possible. And the last university that I'm going to be recommending if you want to study an MBBS program for the 2023 intake is Xi'an Jiaotong University, also known as XJTU. Now, don't confuse this university with XJTL. What? Shanghai? No, sorry, I'm getting confused again. With Xi'an Jiaotong Liverpool University, XJTLU. It's different. This is XJTU, so just Xi'an Jiaotong University. Their MBBS program is July 15th. Their deadline is July 15th. So again, not very far ahead. So if you're planning to apply, just make sure you've got all your documents ready. So these 5 universities are the universities that I recommend that you apply to if you're wanting to still apply for an MBBS program for the 2023 intake. If you want to apply for a spring intake, currently there's only one university offering a spring intake MBBS program for the beginning of next year, and that is Guangzhou Medical University. So they've recently announced that they will be doing that. So you can apply for that if your school year ends at the end of the year and you want to go in the beginning of the year, you can. But just know that there's not a wide variety. There is really only that university available. Okay, now for Chinese language programs, if you want to still apply for the Chinese language program and you want to go in September to go and study in China and do a Chinese language program, which I definitely recommend if you're planning on doing a gap year or want to take some time off, maybe you're doing a sabbatical or it's going to help you in your career, I definitely do recommend it. It's an incredibly fun experience. It's still very challenging and you get to really broaden your horizons. I've done it myself and I definitely recommend. So the first university I'm going to be recommending is Zhejiang University of Science and Technology, otherwise known as ZUST, ZUST, so ZUST. Their deadline is August 15th. So this means that they'll be having, if any of them have a later deadline, like end of August, this means that you won't be starting in the beginning of September because obviously you still have to get accepted, you still have to apply for your visa. So it's most likely going to be more towards the end of September, where you'll be joining at the university. But again, if you've got all your documents ready, just apply. Get your application sorted, get your visa process sorted, get your applications done. If you've got all your documents, it's better to do it now than to wait until the last minute and do it then, because there's so many other factors that could come in then. The university could close the application sooner, especially if their spots are all filled up. The next one, which is also a great university, is Beijing Language and Culture College, also known as BLCC, not to be confused with BLCU. It's a different university, BLCC. And their deadline is August 30th. So again, nice later deadline. So you've got a lot of time to get your documents together. Then we have Harbin Institute of Technology, or HIT. So also recommend them a lot, especially if you're really into cold weather and you really want to be there during the winter and during the snow festival and their ice festival. It's going to be very fun. I think it's a great experience. Their deadline is August 15th. Then we have ECUST, East China University of Science and Technology in Shanghai. Again, a great university to apply to. Their program's deadline is July 21st. And another Shanghai university is East China Normal University, so ECNU. Their deadline is July 31st. So those are 2 universities in Shanghai specifically if you want to apply for a Chinese language program and live in Shanghai for 6 months to a year. Then we have Hangzhou Normal University. So Hangzhou is a little bit outside of Shanghai. You can take a bullet train there. It takes about 30 minutes to arrive, and it's incredibly beautiful. It's called Heaven on Earth in Chinese, and it's one of the most beautiful places you can go to in China. And it's a very cozy environment, and they have a load of different universities that are there. So just to give you guys an idea, Hangzhou Normal University's Chinese language program is still open. They're in Hangzhou. ZUST is also in Hangzhou. They are still open. And then ZUFE, Zhejiang University of Finance and Economics, they're also in Hangzhou. They're also still open. So Hangzhou Normal University's deadline is July 20th. And then, as I mentioned, the final one, ZUFE, Zhejiang University of Finance and Economics, their deadline is July 30th. So in general, as you can see for the Chinese language programs, towards the end of July, a lot of the programs will fall away, the deadlines will pass, and then you have a couple of ones in August. Okay, and I have a couple of questions here on YouTube, so I'm quickly going to answer them. If you're on Instagram and you have some questions, please leave them below and I'll get to them. How long does a study visa take on average? Okay, so to apply to, it's going to take a couple of weeks. So it's not a very difficult process. Basically, you're going to apply to the university. And once you apply to the university and you've been accepted, they're going to physically mail you your acceptance letter and your visa letter. This visa letter is called the JW202. So they're going to mail this to you. And this is why it's very important to have, a postal address. So you're going to apply with your postal address. They're going to mail that to you. When you receive that, you make an appointment at your local Chinese visa application center or Chinese embassy, depending on the country that you're in. And once you need to make sure that you've fulfilled all the other requirements for the visa, but it's not very difficult, especially because a lot of the documents are very similar to what you need in order to apply for the university. So you're going to apply, and then it should be a couple of days, and then you'll have your visa, and they'll give you your passport back. So it's not a very difficult process. In general, they're not going to let you be able to go to China very far in advance to when the actual program starts. So if your program starts in September, beginning of September or end of September, you'll be able to go there maybe a couple of days before registration in order to get your stuff sorted out. So you can't really go like a month before and just spend that time traveling in China. That's not really going to be possible. You'll only be able to go a couple of days before. Okay. Hangzhou is a beautiful city with a very livable environment. Yes, it is. It's a very beautiful city, and it's really close to Shanghai. So, of course, it's very livable because it's much cheaper to live in as well. It's not the cheapest city, but if you're going to be living in Shanghai, Shanghai is known in China as the most expensive city to live in. And I lived in Shenzhen, which is also quite an expensive city, but we knew that if we went to Shanghai, it's going to be very expensive. So living there, especially if you're a Chinese language student, you're going to have to rent an apartment, and that's going to be quite expensive. So in general, being able to live in Hangzhou, which is so, so beautiful, and then on top of that, you are very close to Shanghai. So if you want to go visit, you can do that very easily. And then on top of that, be able to have your living costs below. That is a win-win, definitely. So that's why it's a very popular destination, and we recommend it a lot. So yes, it's also really great that there's so many wonderful universities in Hangzhou as well. Okay, great. Yes, and just for people that are joining a bit later, okay. Asma Das, yes, she's also a student that has already applied. So do you recommend renting if university accommodation is available? If you're going to be a Chinese language student, which I know that you specifically, Asma, you're not a language student. But just for the other students, if you're applying to be a Chinese language student, you're not going to be able to have student or a student accommodation on campus. That's usually just for degree students. So we actually did a whole live stream, a video that we've posted last week onto our YouTube channel. So please go check it out. We did that with WellC, which is a very a great agency, and they have a great English user face as well that you can use. It makes the process of applying for renting and everything so easy. So just be sure to check that out and download their app and go through that. That will help you so much. I wish I had that when I was living in China. Okay, then to answer Asma's question, because she's not applying for a Chinese language program, do I recommend renting? If the university accommodation is available, then no. The reason why I don't recommend it, I have done both. I have rented outside of the university and I have lived inside of the university. The university accommodation is much cheaper. You're going to pay not per month but per semester, but it's still going to be so much cheaper than renting. And also, this is because those buildings are government subsidized, so they don't require you to pay that much in order to live there. Also, a lot of the international student dorms are very new, and they're very modern and quite nice and very spacious. So you can choose between having a roommate. I had a double room at one stage. Later on, I had a single room. I would recommend trying a double room because you also get to make friends with your roommate and everything, and later on transferring to a single room if that's something that you would like to do. But in general, I recommend to have on-campus accommodation just because it makes everything so much easier as you're going to be on campus. So if you have lots of classes and you finish late, you don't have to travel to still get home. It's very easy to just go to your dorm and take a rest if you need to do that and go back to class or etc. It's going to be cheaper as well, and you're going to be able to make so many friends. I know that a lot of people that when they were renting outside, they felt very left out and they wanted to be living inside the campus. So they quickly ended their rental contracts and moved into the campus because it was just a lot more fun to do so. Victoria Abia says, and then there's also another question on Instagram that I'll get to just now. Victoria Abia says, are there schools that would accept students with a 10-year gap between high school and their bachelor's degree? Kind of 35-year-old with only high school enrolled in a Chinese language program. Okay, so yes, this just depends on which Chinese language program you would like to apply to. We've had some students that were even in their 50s applying to Chinese language programs. However, many universities will hesitate to accept such a student. If you are 35 years old and you only have a high school diploma or a graduation certificate, that is fine. You can apply for a Chinese language certificate. Just make sure when you are applying on our website, if there is an age restriction, we do put it on the website. So just scroll down and go through all the information. You'll be able to see which universities have an age restriction. But in general, for Chinese language programs, the age restriction isn't that strict. So if there isn't an age restriction there, you can apply. So for Victoria, I would just recommend going on to China admissions and just going through that and seeing if they have one, and then you can apply. I would just recommend to apply as soon as possible. And then, are there any good Chinese language programs in Shenzhen, which is actually where I studied? So yes, there are. Shenzhen University has a really good Chinese language program. However, the deadline has already passed. So if you want to apply for the spring intake for next year, you can do so. But right now, you can't apply because for the September intake of this year, it's already passed, unfortunately. Okay, and then also Chinese language programs in BLCU, which is Beijing Language and Culture University, versus Tsinghua. Any information on both and which one is better? This might be a bit controversial, but I would recommend BLCU, Beijing Language and Culture University's long-term offline program, as that is their specialization. Their specialization is to teach foreigners Chinese. And all the students that go there, they have wonderful teachers and they have the best accents. The teachers spend so much time on the students, and you get like the best quality as well. BLCU is also often the university that creates the textbooks that the rest of the country uses. So you will have like the best quality teachers at BLCU because that is their specific focus. So yes, I would recommend that. BLCU's program, I think, is already closed. So another good university that you can apply to is BLCC, Beijing Language and Culture College, very, very close to BLCU, also great teachers. So I would recommend that instead. Also, just keep in mind that if you're applying to the Tsinghua Chinese language program, they have very strict requirements, and you will need to have a bachelor's degree in order to apply. So you can't just apply as a high school graduate, which is very uncommon for most programs or most language programs. Okay, any other questions regarding Chinese language programs or medical programs? Okay, well, that does seem to be it. So for some of the people that I see that have just joined, we were talking about which universities you can still apply to that are accepting students for the Bachelors in Medicine programs and then for the Chinese language programs. So if you have any further questions, just please leave them below. You can also rewatch this once it's ended. Yes, so then I see from Dr. Usman Assalam. Usman Aslam, it's all written together, so I'm sorry if I mispronounce. He was asking about postgraduate and medical programs or PhDs. Please go into China Admissions and look up the programs that you're interested in and apply there. This is specifically where we're talking about undergraduate and MBBS programs and Chinese language programs, as they are most applied to. Okay, Victoria asked, can a student who completed her high school 10 years ago apply for a bachelor's program? This is less likely, as this means a lot of bachelor's programs have an age limit of 25 to 30. So it's going to be very difficult to apply to a bachelor's program. If you're applying to a program that is a bit more open, so nothing like engineering or medicine or anything like that. So if you're applying for maybe like a bachelor in Chinese language and culture, that will have a later age limit. So then you will be able to apply for that. So if you look at like a bachelor's in Chinese language and culture, you can probably apply for that. Just check the age limits, Victoria, on the website. Look up on chinaadmissions.com and see what is available. But just note, if you're applying for something like engineering, mathematics, or medicine, unfortunately, it's not going to be possible. Okay, and then Hang Tua asks a very, very important question. Do they ask you to take a test to gauge what level you are proficient in so they can slot you in the appropriate level? Okay, so yes, they are going to do that. So once you arrive at the university and you've registered, you're going to be the teachers are going to ask you like, what is your level, and you can talk to them, and they'll talk to you a little bit and ask you to read some things, and depending on that, they will slot you into a class. So they have beginner A, beginner B, intermediate A, intermediate, elementary A, elementary B, intermediate A, intermediate B, advanced A, advanced B. So there's a lot of actual levels to go through, and each one being a semester. Then also, if, for example, they slot you into beginner B and you feel like it's really difficult, you can't understand it, you can, in that week, you can choose to go to beginner A, or if it's too easy, you can choose to go up a level, and that's not going to be a problem. You just can't do that, obviously, like in the middle of your program. So in the first week, you can do that. Okay. Great. And then also Victoria's got some questions about the Chinese language program. I have done a whole live stream about that since that was my major, talking about how long it actually takes you to do that and how it's going to work. So I would recommend just going onto our other live streams that we have on our YouTube channel. Please go over that. We answer all the questions regarding studying Chinese. Okay, so this is it for today's live stream. Thank you guys so much for joining, and if you have joined a bit later on and you'd like to know what was going on, you can rewatch this in a bit. So thank you guys for joining so much.